Well, it's the question we keep asking. How badly will those across-the-board federal spending cuts known as sequestration damage our region's economy? Sequestration tops our roundtable to-do list this week, and we've got two pros to talk about it. Jonathan Allen, Politico's senior Washington correspondent, and Brian Coester, the CEO of Coester Value Management Services, a housing appraisal business. He's a big fish in our region's real estate appraisal sector. Welcome to you both. Brian, a newbie to the show. Welcome to Washington Business Report.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Jonathan, an old pro, tell us where we stand. I feel like a broken record asking what will we or won't we on sequestration, but we have to ask.
We will. I mean, there's always a chance for some last-minute deal, but it doesn't seem that there's any interest on either side, really, from the President or the House Republicans to yield any ground and avoid this sequestration. If I were in a government agency or at a government contracting office, I would very much expect for it to take effect, and hopefully have been planning for that to take effect for some time by now. And
it's almost an unusual alliance of different people coming forward and now saying they support sequestration. Howard Dean, I saw this week, said, I don't like what the impact will be, but I think it's the right thing to do. How much is the momentum growing on both sides?
Well, look, on the Republican side, there is definitely desire to make sure that these spending cuts happen, and the alternative is to have fewer spending cuts and more revenue. That's not what these guys in the House Republican caucus signed up for. It's not what a lot of the Senate Republicans signed up for. They'd rather see sequestration, even if it's imperfect, which is all spending cuts than some mix. I think on the Democratic side, there's a concern that the Pentagon will escape it, and that the domestic agencies will be the ones that end up bearing the burden.
But the Pentagon's not so certain about that yet.
Right. But I'm just saying, if there were to be some fix, Pentagon would get fixed first, and I think that's why you're starting to hear some on the left say, look, this isn't the worst thing in the world if it all goes into effect. And of course, it's not as bad. People say, I know Paul Krugman in the New York Times wrote that earlier today, wrote that it's not as bad as the fiscal cliff would have been, or like a government shutdown.
True. Brian, we're seeing all kinds of different estimates, but most people agree that while there will certainly be an impact if sequestration goes into effect, economists are now gauging somewhere from about, if the GDP had grown 2.6% in the coming year, they're saying it'll probably grow more in the range of 2.1%. So not catastrophic, but certainly for our region, it will be felt. Talk to us about the housing industry. How are things doing right now in the Washington region?
Well, see, the thing is that the D.C. market is kind of an anomaly, right? That you've got a very defined geographic area, you've got a huge number of high income earners, and you've really, I mean, if you look at the top income areas, it's always in the top. So the D.C. never really had a huge downturn. So it's maintained. I mean, if you look at areas like Vegas, I mean, the house was worth $600,000, now it's worth $100. D.C. was worth $600, now it's worth $500. So it never really went down. I mean, anything that affects jobs, anything that affects employment and things like that obviously would have a negative effect, but I think there's been so much people on the sideline right now, and what we're seeing is that there's a lot of built-up demand for people who are ready to go. I mean, this spring market, we have clients that are seeing huge increases in purchase demand. They're seeing huge amounts of increase in inquiries for purchases, and people are kind of, there's a spirit of things for being on the sideline really for the past 3 or 4 years. So I think, I think this sequestration would obviously be a negative, but I still think it's going to be a good D.C. housing market overall this year. How
do you keep adapting with appraisals? I know that you all are known in the industry for being some of the high-tech leaders in terms of bringing kind of a hometown approach, but using high-tech. But it seems like with prices being all over the place, how do you adapt?
Well, it's funny, as an appraisal management company, we do nationally. So it's very difficult, and it's as complicated as you would think. A lot of technology, we got to rely on our appraisers, we got to rely and communicate with our clients. It's been really a very fast-run race with dealing with all the adoptions of new legislation, new technology requirements. CFPB comes out with a lot of stuff, and the state comes out with something, and then a lender comes out with something, an investor comes out with something, and just being able to adapt. And a lot of people haven't been able to adapt, and that's kind of the thing that's preventing one of the markets. Is just so many changes are going on that it's very difficult to keep up. I mean, I meet with all the regulators, all of the people from all the mortgage bankers associations and the ABA, and it's one of these things where you've got to almost meet with them weekly, and they don't even know what's going on.
Nobody knows what's going on, Jonathan Allen, and this is what we keep hearing from the business community.
Wait. I refinanced this week, so you're off.
But you talk to any business, and especially someone in the housing industry, people are very anxious about whether or not to buy a home with all this uncertainty due to Washington. Tell us what is going on, at least behind the scenes. Are there any talks going on right now to try and avoid sequestration, or is everything just on hold?
There are no talks going on to avoid sequestration. What you do have is a couple of phone calls from the president to Republican leaders on the Hill yesterday, basically to touch gloves, I think mostly so the president could say that he had talked to them rather than actually having talked to them about a solution. And look, neither side really wants a solution. The president loves to beat the Republicans up for wanting to cut spending on various things, whether it's police or, you know, fire services or the military. And the Republicans love to beat the president up for wanting to spend more money. So this is a situation where there's a lot of a political interest on both sides in not having something done, and they think the stakes are a lot smaller in this than a government shutdown.
Then they're accomplishing it. Not getting anything done has certainly been their success. We're going to take a quick break and come back with both of you, so stay with us. And we're back with Politico senior Washington correspondent Jonathan Allen and Coester Value Management Services CEO Brian Coester. Thanks to you both for joining us. Brian, you and I were talking during the break about some of the changes that are happening in the housing industry as a result of this new agency that's been created by the Obama White House, CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Board. Some good and some bad. The Wall Street Journal doesn't like it very much, but you say that for consumers there is some good and some bad.
Yeah, so the issue with the housing industry is that you've got so many people involved in the regulations. So you've got the state legislators, you've got the banking regulators that are at a federal level, you've got you've got the investors who kind of have an overlay. So there's so many things involved, and the problem is they're just trying to figure out what to do, right? And so, you know, you have overlapping regulations that conflict each other. One says you must disclose this. The other says you cannot disclose that. And so what they're really trying to do is get consistency. So with the
Is it working?
It's starting to work. So I think they're starting to go in the general direction. One of the big things they come out with is the QRM, Qualified Residential Mortgage, also mortgage servicing rules. So the QRM defines what is considered a qualified mortgage. So as long as you make a loan within these parameters, you couldn't be at risk for predatory lending. And there's some obvious some caveats to it and things like that. But at least it qualifies. Okay, if I make this loan, a year from now, I'm not going to get sued by the state attorney general saying this, you know, you messed up the borrower and you did this predatory. Also, mortgage servicing rules came out that says, you know, here's the proper way to go about servicing a loan in case the borrower goes into default. Here's the borrower's rights, here's the lender's rights, and here's the proper way to do it. That just provides some clarity. What the mortgage industry is looking for right now is just really clarity on this kind of wave of regulations that's coming aboard, all the Dodd-Frank stuff, all the just wave of regulations that are coming aboard, and how to deal with them properly in a compliant way. The technology companies and the loan origination systems have done a decent job at trying to adapt to these changes. It's just one of these things where it's, okay, so what changes now?
Right.
And then they come back and say, well, this is going to be modified a little bit.
So businesses, as always, Jonathan Allen, looking for clarity. Let me bring up another word like sequestration that doesn't mean a lot on its face but has major implications. CR, continuing resolution. Congress continuing to work under those rules, funding all of the different agencies at the same levels as last year. That's having an impact on spending in our area as well. Explain to us where we are in that process.
Sure. The continuing resolution from last year was basically they did a 6-month fix and they kicked it into March. So later in March, after we've gotten the sequestration answer, they've got to either continue funding the government or let that expire and have a government shutdown. I think the thinking on Capitol Hill and the White House right now is that that will happen. There's some question as to whether
what will happen. A government shutdown?
I'm sorry, no. That they'll get an agreement and move forward with a continuing resolution that moves through September 30th. Now, look, there is a huge problem with continuing to do this, which is you aren't able to adjust the policy year to year, and we've been doing continuing resolutions for several years now.
It's getting a little tiresome. Okay, Jonathan Allen covering Congress, which is not always an easy beat. Brian Coester bringing us insight from the housing industry. Thanks so much. And thank you for joining us. We hope to see you back here next week for Washington Business Report.